Welcome back to the Call on Our Shop podcast. We are live every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube, and you can download the Call on Our Shop podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And I got to do a special shout out. Last week was our most downloaded podcast. So we appreciate you guys for going out there to iTunes or wherever you get your podcast and downloading it. But I'm Austin. I'm joined by Logan and Sam, the usual suspects. We're here to talk about week 4. We're also talking about big week 5 matchups in the NFL, talk about our Super Bowl favorites, and so much more. And then we'll finish it off Thursday by talking about Thursday Night Football, Rams versus Seahawks. All of it timestamped down below. If you're new to the channel, click that subscribe button, click that like button as well. And shout out to our 2 newest All-Stars, SNFU and Nick Bednar. We appreciate you guys' support. But Logan, how are you doing, man? How was your weekend?
It's going really well. And, we got the sports trifecta going on. We got college football, we've got pros, and we've got baseball playoffs starting. Go check out my baseball videos. A little bit of a plug for my baseball videos, but it's a really exciting time to be a sports fan and a sports gambler even.
Yeah, no, you are not wrong. We're about to get a weird overlap where every single sport is in season for. I know there's always this like ESPN post with like there's an NHL, there's an NFL, there's an NBA, all of those types of games. Like I forget what they call it, but it's an exciting time to be alive. Sam, how are you doing?
Well, you know what? I made a fatal fantasy mistake this week. I hit the road Thursday after work, arrived where I was headed, going to the beach. Got there after the 8 o'clock game already started. What I do, T. Higgins, 3 of my 4 rosters, he was starting. Ended up going 1-3 this week in fantasy. Not great, but what are you going to do? Got to move on to the next week.
I would ask if that his decision to start or sit was the reason that cost you a week, but sorry to hear that, man. As a T. Higgins owner, I wish he was out there, but alas, he was not. So we're going to move into week 4, biggest takeaways. And there were a lot of things that went on in week 4. And we'll talk about a lot of them, but I'm going to start off with you, Logan. What was your biggest takeaway? Because I think this one might hit close to home.
Yeah, no, it hit very close to home. Now, as a Carolina Panthers fan, what game was I watching the most of in that 1 o'clock slot? It was Cowboys and Panthers, and the Cowboys. Look, the Cowboys are a thing this year, and I don't want everybody to come from my head saying you guys say the Cowboys are a thing every year, but this Cowboys team feels different. What feels different to me is Dan Quinn and that defense. They finally have a defensive coordinator that knows what he's doing, right? There's talent all over the field. You've got obviously Micah Parsons. You've got Diggs, who has an interception in every single game this year. I mean, how impressive has he been? He's been absolutely impressive. Ezekiel Elliott is running angry. He's running hard. You got Tony Pollard. You got Dak Prescott, who's on a comeback tour. Man, this team is live in the NFC picture, and a lot of people aren't ready to crown the Cowboys. I wasn't ready to crown them, but I'm ready to say that they're a thing this year.
They have looked really good, and besides, even the week 1, you could argue that they could have won. They could be undefeated at this moment. They've looked awesome. As a person that always watches these Cowboys, and I liked your upset pick last week, which was the Panthers. I thought, they had a chance. And as the game, started, it was like, all right, they got a decent chance, and then it kind of fell apart towards the end of the game. But Cowboys, they've looked legit. We'll see. I mean, they got to be the front runners, obviously, in the NFC East. This is a big showdown, I think, this weekend, though. They do play the Giants. And it's a game that, you think about it, man, the Cowboys could drop this game because it just makes no sense. But I'm excited to see where they go. Defense, Diggs, he's looked awesome. We'll see how he matures because he still says he has room to improve, and everyone does in the NFL. So I'm excited for it. Sam, what about you? How'd you like that game?
Biggest takeaway is that any Zeke doubters are completely silenced at this point, right? Like I know there were some question marks going into the season. Is Zeke going to be the Zeke of the past? I think he is, right? I mean, he had a great game. Just a 3-headed monster with what that offense can do, right? Between Zeke, Dak, and, Amari Cooper / CeeDee Lamb. Looks like one of those 2 guys is always going off. Seems like they're hitting it on basically every different caliber. So, yeah, I like the Cowboys, and I like them in an easy division. So they just need to not screw up the easy games when they play the Giants like next week. So if they can pull that W out, I think that's decisive of and indicative of how that season might go for him. So got to win next week.
Yeah, and I got to say a big shout out to Dalton Schultz. He's had an absolutely killer start to his year. A guy that left off the page last week, and I was hurt badly because I picked his under in my normal video. He's looked really good. Won't be taking his under ever again. They feed him the ball, and he's looked awesome. So props to him. He's going to get paid this offseason, so I hope he continues to grow in that offense. But yeah, Cowboys, they're looking legit. They got a lot to be proud of if you're a Cowboys fan. I'm going to take my biggest takeaway. Talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I was skeptical, and in a lot of my picks, I was picking against the Cardinals this weekend. I was thinking, playing the Rams, they've lost, I don't know, 8 straight games to the Rams, never beat them with Sean McVay. What do? Just came out and punched him in the throat. It was not a game from the start. Cardinals looked legit. Kyler Murray looked about as MVP favorite as he possibly could be. Arguably should be the MVP favorite, at least through the first 4 weeks of the season. He's looked insane. And if they keep it up, I don't see there's any way that Kyler Murray does not win MVP. Cardinals defense looked pretty good. Stopped Cooper Kupp, made them miss. I mean, Cooper Kupp had 13 targets, only caught, I think, 5 or 6 of them. They looked really good. I'm in on that Cardinals team. Excited for him. Big week this week against the 49ers. Massive letdown spot.
Well, we'll talk a little bit later about MVP. We have a point though about Kyler and what he's doing. Definitely making the case for himself that, hey, he's had some doubters in the past about is he in that top tier? And yeah, you look at last week, what else is there to say against him at this point? So yeah, I know really good performance for the Cardinals and what I thought was going to be a lopsided game in the other direction. So I think they proved a lot of doubters wrong, definitely.
Yeah, they looked awesome. Sam, what was your biggest takeaway in week 4?
My biggest takeaway was might be the best week for New York football fans. Really nice.
Yeah, I like that.
Both the Giants and the Jets. And, look at what the Jets did. Zach Wilson started to look like the little bit of Zach Wilson that we saw in the end of his first game against the Panthers. He started to get things clicking with Corey Davis again. So some hope for the Jets next week against an easy matchup. And look what the Giants did. And we're going to win this thing on our first drive in overtime. Daniel Jones finally getting a connection going with Kenny G. So I think some good takeaways on the offensive side of the ball for both of those teams. So Giants, Jets were my big takeaway from last week.
I am super excited, not only as a Jets fan, and I'll talk about them later. I don't need to go on here and just hammer the Jets and be a Jets homer, but I'm really excited for the Giants and mostly Saquon Barkley. I know he had a lot of haters, a lot of doubters in the preseason. People were dropping him in fantasy football. They're like, and including you, Sam, you were like, no, I'm avoiding Saquon Barkley in every single league. And it's still 4 weeks in. So I'm not necessarily, he could suffer a setback, injuries you never can predict any injuries, but I'm just happy to see what the Giants did this weekend. And finally, I've been preaching why finally they started to use Kadarius Toney. I know Logan loves Kadarius Toney as a Florida Gator alum. They finally gave him the ball and he looked actually decent. I don't know why they weren't using him, but we'll see. Finally getting him the ball. Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, both were out. So we'll see how they did, but shout out to the Jets and the Giants. Big overtime wins this in week 4.
Yeah, no, I mean, come on. This is a bit of mirage. Chill, Giants and Jets fans. Chill, right? Go crawl
Let us
back
have
into your
something.
sewer. Crawl back into your sewer. I know you get so excited. You pop the champagne over winning a game, but go. This is a mirage. Jets faced an absolutely atrocious, depleted Titans team, and I'm gonna say this: when we look at the end of the year, the Saints are gonna be one of those teams that you're gonna be like, we had expectations for them, but they really underperformed. I don't think the Saints are all that good. I shout out to the Giants for finally putting together something offensive, but I'm still not sold on either of those New York teams. I think you'll see that probably next week when the Jets do lose to the Falcons in a spot that they probably should and could win.
Well, yes, the Titans were depleted on offense. They were out Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, obviously their 2 biggest wide receivers. But, they had Derrick Henry, they had Tannehill, they had other options. I don't think the defense was suffering that many injuries unless I'm missing something.
They're just bad. They're a terrible defense. They're like 32nd or 30th in pass defense. They're just bad.
But still, the caliber team that you think the Jets would be able to beat, I think, is a little bit lower than the Titans. I think the Titans were above what people were predicting. And you look into next week, there's nothing to get excited about with the Falcons. So to say that's a lock for them, I think is a little.
It's in London, so weird stuff can happen. But I don't want to talk too much about that game because I know Austin's got something to say.
We'll talk about that in a little bit when we get into our week 5 upset picks. That's a little bit of a spoiler for who mine is. But there's a lot. I mean, you got to think about the Jets. We were down bad. We were 0-3. We were like, Zach Wilson, he's getting sacked every play. It was miserable being a Jets fan, and even a Giants fan could say the same exact thing. So it's just exciting to see, and it goes to show you, and it's something I preach in my videos. Anything can happen. Any team can win on any given Sunday, except for the Texans. They're terrible. Sorry, they didn't deserve that.
That was rude.
But for real, any team can win on any given Sunday. It's the NFL. It's like the Patriots almost beat the Bucks if it weren't for that upright. I mean, this is why it's so hard betting spreads in the NFL, and that's what I try to preach. I've had a great start to the season, but it's the NFL for a reason. Any team wins. It's not, college, you have a lot more blowouts than, NFL wise, but still in college, any team can lose too. I don't know. I could name several upsets in college too. But wrapping up week 4, that's relatively the end of the quarter of the NFL season. We're going to talk about our Super Bowl favorites. And Sam, I'm going to start with you. Who are you riding with your Super Bowl favorite starting for the rest of the season?
Well, I told you last week you need to get me a cheesehead, and you still need to get me a cheesehead because I'm on the Packers train. And it's one of those things. Can I point to any statistic and say this is why the Packers are the best team or most likely to win the Super Bowl? I really can't. A 3-1 team that looked awful week 1 and hasn't looked amazing in any of the last 3 weeks. Some close games. Should have beat a Pittsburgh team a lot more than they won by last week. But it's something about Rodgers and the poise I see from him this year and the connection that he now has, not just with Devontae, but with Randall Cobb, which was always the question that he never had his wide receiver. Running backs, A.J. Dillon looks good as a complement to Aaron Jones. So I think they finally have a run game they can depend on. I think some of those question marks that always held the Packers down from getting through the NFC Championship game, I think they kind of have those things covered on offense this year. And so late in the season, you need a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers at the helm. And I think he can get it done. So that's why I think he's a Super Bowl favorite right now.
Finally, they freed A.J. Dillon. You heard me preaching all throughout the preseason. I thought A.J. Dillon was legit, and they didn't use him the first 3 weeks of the season. So finally happy to see them giving him the ball because that man's massive. He's a unit. It's hard to tackle that guy, and they're going to need him to win those games if they're going to get home field advantage, be in Lambeau Field in December and January. They're going to need him. And it's not Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones can run through someone, but it's not like A.J. Dillon, who's 250 pounds coming through. They're going to need him to earn those tough yards, 4th and 1 kind of thing. So, Sam, we won't bash for the Packers when they lose an easy game one of these weeks. We'll come for your head. But Logan, who's your Super Bowl favorite so far?
Well, preseason I picked the Bills, and now I'm all back on the Bills. Look, I really do like what the Bills are doing. They've just had some very impressive victories. Now, is it against some inferior opponent? Yeah, the Texans are bad, but the spread wasn't minus 35.5. No, they looked very impressive with Josh Allen and that offense finally clicking on all cylinders. I'm curious for what you guys will find the weakness with the Bills, because early on in the season I thought, well, maybe their running game is not going to be great, but they're running the ball pretty decently. Zach Moss and Singletary, that's a pretty decent two-headed monster, and they don't need to run the ball when Josh Allen is playing outstanding like he currently is.
They have a big matchup this week. This is kind of the make or break week for me on the Bills as they play the Chiefs. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Our game predictions. It's a big week for them. But I'm going to move on to my team. And now I do think the Bills have a good shot because it's in the AFC. I think the NFC is much stronger. And I'm going to stick to my Super Bowl favorite from the preseason. Stick with the Buccaneers, not because, I necessarily love them and love how they've looked so far, but I just think they have the most talent out of any team in the NFL. And that's on a ride with them. They got obviously Tom Brady, who did not look good in his return to Foxborough, but it was a rainy night. Anything can happen. Belichick knows Brady better than anyone else in the NFL. So I think they had a good game plan for him. I do like the Buccaneers. They've had a ton of injuries on defense and they keep coming. But you think about last year, the Buccaneers struggled throughout the first, 8 weeks of the NFL season. They struggled, and that's kind of seems to be the same thing. They had a lot of injuries last year, finally got everyone healthy and made a big run and obviously ended up winning the Super Bowl. So I'm still going to stick with the Buccaneers to win the Super Bowl. They were my Super Bowl favorite so far.
I think that's an interesting take, especially after, what we just saw last week. They should have lost that game.
Yeah, arguably.
I think it goes to show maybe just how central Gronk was to that offense. They looked like they couldn't get things going without him. That guy was a notable absence. Again, look, I was a Buccaneers fan. I still am. I'm pushing them last week. But, after seeing their performance last week, I'm rethinking that. I think it's a little bit of a question mark. Are they going to be able to do the exact same thing they did last year? I don't know. But they definitely should have lost that game, and they should definitely be a 2-2 team right now. So I don't know. We'll see.
I want to attack him from both angles, right? You just talked about the offense. You're right. The offense definitely wasn't clicking. Now, could that be Belichick defense? Maybe a little bit, right? But that defense for the Bucs, you peeled Richard Sherman off the couch, right? That's crazy. It's crazy how depleted they are and how they were letting Mac Jones get what he wanted, right? Against good NFC teams. Austin, you just mentioned the NFC's deep. If you're going to pick Super Bowl favorites, I wouldn't touch anybody in the NFC. There's going to be some parity over there. AFC, there's definitely value with the Bills. Look, get the Bills right now before they beat the Chiefs, because the Bills beat the Chiefs, everybody and their mother's going to be believers in them. That's why that's where the value is at, for sure.
I get the criticism, but it's Tom Brady, and I'm still going to ride him into the ground. I mean, yeah, that you even said it yourself. They have a ton of injuries, and their secondary is as depleted as any in the NFL. And the front seven's still killing it. I don't think the Patriots ran for positive yards. I think Damian Harris had like -3 or 4 yards rushing. They stuffed them. And you saw Mac Jones dumping it off 31 for 40, a lot of dump offs. So I think they'll correct that. They'll be better. I just don't think they're going to be. I think the defense will get better. Sure. Did you love seeing Richard Sherman out there week 1, 3 days or whatever? They signed him on Wednesday or Thursday. Boom, he's out there starting. You don't love that, but he'll get better. He's obviously rusty. And I think they'll get Carlton Davis back, who missed most of that game. They got a lot of. I mean, it's the Bucs. I'm not scared of the Falcons or the Saints in their division, and I'm still not sold on the Carolina Panthers. Sorry,
calm down.
Hey, I'm just saying you're gonna have to beat one of the best teams in the NFL.
We're coming
for some respect. But
coming
moving on, and we're gonna talk about Carolina Panthers are not my team, but we're gonna talk about the most overrated teams in the NFL through 4 weeks. And Sam, I'm gonna let you start this one off.
Well, I might need a clown nose for the hot take I'm about to give you. But who's the hottest team after last week? The Cardinals. And I proceed to say the Cardinals are the most overrated team for a couple reasons. Let me present my case, Your Honor. A couple of things. First off, what did we see last week? Well, we saw Christian Kirk do not much of anything, right? So questions there. We saw AJ Green have an amazing game, which we know is not sustainable for AJ Green. We saw Kyler play lights out, which again, there's question marks about whether he can do that long-term, sustained period of time, especially late in the season. And James Conner, back-to-back 2-touchdown games. I think that's an anomaly, and I don't think we can count on that, going on deeper in the season. That's a tough division. It's going to remain a tough division. And so for them to be successful after the beatdowns that they might have to, even if they come out successful, endure in all those divisional matchups, I mean, that's tough. And so right now, everyone's writing off the Rams and the 49ers saying it's the Cardinals division. I don't think so. I think the Cardinals are still lock and step with the Rams. And I think, they had a great game. But you play that game, 9 out of 10 times, I don't think you're going to see that same outcome that you saw last week. So Cardinals, I think, need to be taken down a peg.
I think there are people that have crowned them like the number 1 team in power rankings or things like that. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but there's a lot to be excited as a Cardinals fan. And I do think more so, I believe the hype. I think AJ Green and James Conner can continue what they've been doing. Now, James Conner going to get 2 touchdowns every week. Heck no, but they're taking what the defense gives him. It's not like James Conner's going out there and busting off 50-yard runs. It's not what he's doing. It's 1-yard touchdowns, and it's not a yard longer because it's just they get to the 1-yard line and boom, they just pound it in. So that's something they lacked all of last year. So good for them. Kenyon Drake had, I think, the most goal-to-go rushes, and he did not convert a lot of them in the last season. So props to them for getting James Conner. And AJ Green, I picked his under for season-long receiving yards. I'm happy to see him succeeding because, heck, AJ Green was one of the most talented receivers in the NFL with the Bengals. He just couldn't stay on the field. So props to him. And then I think they have so many weapons, which is something they've lacked in recent seasons. They had to trot out an old 40-year-old Larry Fitzgerald just because they had to. And he was just meeping around there. But now they got Rondale Moore, who I didn't even really see him much in week 4. And obviously, you have DeAndre Hopkins. So, Logan, what are your takes on the Cardinals?
Yeah, no, I didn't know what to think of the Cardinals, but how they played the Rams was very inspiring. I don't know how okay, sure, Sam, they're not going to go 17-0, right? Nobody's saying that, right? Well, let's just take what we've got on the season so far. And look, Kyler has been playing outstanding. Last year I really did go and bet some of my own money on Kyler MVP. I was like, this is the year. I was just a year too early. This actually is the year on Kyler Murray. I think Kyler in that offense is clicking. Another year with, there's some chemistry with Hopkins, with Cliff Kingsbury. The offense is there's no question marks there. And the defense has been playing really good. How they made Matt Stafford look bad, right? Matt Stafford had a lot of bad throws, bad decisions. The Cardinals, why would you rain on their parade right now? Let them be. They're a hot team, and
they did have a statement win last week. They absolutely did. I can't dispute that. But yeah, they're a 4-0 team, and those other 3 wins, Tennessee Titans, Minnesota Vikings, Jacksonville Jaguars. That doesn't say a whole lot. That doesn't instill a lot of confidence. A Tennessee team that just went down to what team? My New York Jets.
That's a different Tennessee team. Relax.
The Vikings, 1-3, look like they might have a coaching change in the offseason, and the Jags, probably the worst team in the NFL. So let's see if they can keep it up, right? And they've got, San Francisco coming up in the schedule, Packers, San Francisco again. It's not an easy next set of games for them. Let's reassess after week 8 and see if they're still the 8-0 team that a lot of people are writing them off as.
I'd be surprised if they were 8-0. I think anyone would. I think the biggest thing for the Cardinals, they have, and this is a weird take that I was just thinking of, they have Kyler Murray playing like Russell Wilson. And what I mean by that is creating plays and not taking hits. Russell Wilson, he never takes hits. He's like, he avoids them. He's Houdini. He doesn't take hits. And that's why he's played in every single NFL game of his career. And that was the big thing that happened last year to the Arizona Cardinals. They were a decent team. And then Kyler Murray got injured. I mean, he still played and still gutted it out, but his shoulder was not there. And they're not making him run it that much. I mean, you think about last year, he had, 10, 11 rushing touchdowns. That took a beating on his body. This year, he does not have nearly the rushing volume. And I think that's the big change that they made. They're like, Kyler, we know you love running around. We love watching you run, but you got to chill. And I think that's what has made them one of the best teams in the NFL. Excited to see where they go. But yeah, they're in a tough division. If they go, they win 13 games, I think they'd be happy. But it's a tough division. But my biggest overrated team, and I know we have someone that follows the podcast, Browns backer, so close your ears. I think the Cleveland Browns are overrated. And here's why. Now, the Cleveland Browns have looked relatively pretty good since week 1. They lost the Chiefs. But since then, they beat the Vikings last week. The week before, they beat the Bears. I don't remember who they beat in week 2. I'm just not in on their team. And here's why. I think they're just overrated because I don't think Baker Mayfield's that good. And maybe that's a hot take, but you see Baker missing easy throws like to Odell Beckham Jr. was wide open to just ice the game. He's missing easy things like that. The running game, Nick Chubb's doing well. Kareem Hunt's doing well, but I think their defense is overrated from right now. They're like one of the best ranked defenses in the NFL. And I just think it's overrated. Now, Jeremiah, I don't know his last name. I can't pronounce him. He's played really well, but the defense is their stats are inflated from the Bears game where the Bears got like 3 yards of offense. I'm not sold on it. It's a big week against them. They're traveling to SoFi Stadium, taking on a Chargers team that I really like. I think this is the make or break. If the Browns win this game, maybe I'll be back on the hype train. I just think they're overrated.
Browns backer, relax. I got your back, man. The Austin is speaking some blasphemy. This team is going to be all right? They have to get Jarvis Landry back. They got some injuries on offense for sure. I like what their defense is doing. You're going to say Owusu Koromoa, right? That's who you're trying to go for. But their secondary is really strong. They have a really good running back. It kind of sounded like when you were talking about that, you were convincing yourself, you're like, maybe they're not as bad as I'm thinking. Yes, maybe they haven't won the games in the fashion that you want to, but this is the NFL. You know that. There's some parity. And I think without a doubt, they will win at SoFi Stadium against the Chargers and remind people why they're this ground and pound kind of gritty team, right? That's going to be, you get hit with a Nick Chubb and then Kareem Hunt comes in. It's that 1-2 attack. There isn't a better 1-2 attack in the NFL. Relax, Browns fans. Austin's just coming for your.
I just don't think they're a top 3 team in the AFC. And I was sure they'll win the AFC North probably, although the Ravens did look pretty good. It's just not a team that gives me a lot of confidence. It's like a Tennessee Titans light. If they get down, they're not winning. And that's what I think the Cleveland Browns are. If they get down and they can't pound Nick Chubb or like the Titans do with Derrick Henry, they're not winning the game. I'm just not sold on Baker Mayfield. Don't think he's that guy. I think he's good. He's talented, but not sold on his talent so far in the NFL. That's just my hot take. I just don't think they're all that good.
Yeah, I think it's a consistency thing for Baker because he has those games where you're like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. He had a great week 1. He looked awesome. That's why I'm so down on him is because they needed to win that week 1 game against the Chiefs when Baker played out of his mind. And they should have won and they lost. And those are games that you have to win when your QB plays much higher than I think his ceiling or he's capable of playing week in and week out.
Definitely his lack of chemistry with any sort of wide receiver, though. That's a big cause for concern. I mean, but you got to love what you're saying with Myles Garrett and with that run game.
Yeah.
I mean, those are some perks. But look, Chargers, Cardinals, Broncos, those are 3 tough games, right? I mean, yeah, they got a tough slate ahead of them. And I know I agree with you in that respect. I think they're closer to a 500 team than a lot of people want to, admit. But, when you look at the AFC, it's the Chiefs and then it's the Bills. So when you said top 3 team, it's like, well, it's really like who's the third best team, right? And because that's what's up for debate. And I like the Browns, but who are you putting up against them? I guess maybe the Chargers, maybe the Raiders. So yeah, I don't know. I'd say the status quo on the Browns is correct as is right now.
I mean, we'll see. I think the Ravens have a good chance. I mean, they've looked pretty good the last couple of weeks. But Logan, who's your most overrated team in the NFL?
Right. I originally, when we were discussing picks, I was like, do I want to go to Kansas City Chiefs? I kind of talked about them last week, but I'm scared to make Patrick Mahomes angry. I don't want to do it. Right. We've already seen him he dropped 1 million touchdowns on the poor Eagles. They didn't deserve that. But mine is a team that I think is going to go into a tailspin, and that's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. I just, the way I interpret this question as, what team is significantly worse than their record? And I think that's the Raiders, right? They got lucky even beating the Ravens in that Monday night showdown. I am not sold. I'm still one of those people that's not sold on Derek Carr. That defense, while at times they can get after the quarterback, they've got some decent pass rushers. That secondary is bad. They Justin Herbert had his way with them. I think the Raiders are going to go into a tailspin, and John Gruden's just going to be left red-faced, tomato-looking self all he wants to.
The Raiders, and I'm glad you brought this up because, man, you do not know the slander I got for picking the Chargers spread on Monday Night Football. And it's funny because normally what happens every time people slander me in the comments, the bet ends up cashing because it's like I'm going against the public, and that's how you win money. But yeah, everyone was just like, no, you're an idiot. Pick Raiders. And then it was no sweat bet. I really didn't have to sweat much until like a little bit in the fourth quarter. And then the Chargers iced them. But it was that and the Jaguars plus 7.5. I got slandered for them. And then here they are, winners. So, I'm not in on the Raiders. I'm looking at their schedule. You got the Bears this weekend. Then you have Broncos, Eagles, Giants, and then you get the Chiefs. So their schedule's not hard. We're not going to sit up here and say the Bears, right, or Broncos and Eagles are necessarily the best teams in the NFL, and the Giants. I don't know. I'm not in on the Raiders. Sam, what are your thoughts on the Raiders?
Well, they
have a passionate fan base, so maybe you can stand by them. Maybe they'll like you.
I had the Raiders beating the Chargers, so I guess I got that one wrong. I more so thought that the Chargers were going to flub it and then choke like.
I was too.
And that didn't happen. So I mean, I guess we got to give Herbert some kudos there. He's getting it done. It's just such a tough division in the AFC West, right? Because I mean, the Chiefs and the Chargers, they're just looking so awesome right now. And yeah, so I think the expectation that Derek Carr is going to be able to continue what he was doing, that efficiency through the whole season, I think is unrealistic. So in that sense, yeah, there's due for a return to normalcy there. And we got to bring the Raiders down a peg.
I think Joey Bosa summed it up pretty clearly. And if you didn't see his comments, I strongly urge you to go read them because he basically trashed Derek Carr in his post-game press conference. He's basically said, in essence, if you get pressure on him, he curls up in a ball and that's it. And that's what they did. They got pressure on him early and he just struggled, except for those couple drives to start the second half. And I think that's I like Derek Carr I don't hate a lot of players in the NFL, hardly any. So I think he's talented, but I just don't think this Raiders team is all that good. Their record's much better than it should be. And I think at the end of the day, they'll be a 9-8 team, right around that 500 mark, maybe 10-7. I just don't think they're a playoff team. And I sure hope they aren't. I don't want to. But let's talk about, so we're going to talk about a little fantasy football. We're going to talk about what do you do with several players. We're going to talk about players that have had a great start to the season and players that haven't had a great start. And I'd argue if you were redrafting leagues right now, I think a certified running back one, Cordarelle Patterson. What are your guys' thoughts on Cordarelle Patterson this year? As someone that rosters him in our league, I'm curious what you guys have a takeaway on Cordarelle Patterson, whichever one of you guys wants to go.
I feel pretty strongly about Mr. Patterson. First of all, you keep belly aching to me. Why does ESPN have him as a running back and not a wide receiver? Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I mean, he's running routes like a wide receiver. I don't understand that. He's a hybrid. But how unsustainable is Cordarelle Patterson getting all these touchdowns? Like you think, I mean, it's kind of crazy out there just watching how defenses focus in so much on Wrigley and Pitts, and here Cordarelle Patterson is waving, hello, give me the ball. It really is crazy. If you've got Patterson, this is the ultimate sell high, right? You have to sell high. You cannot expect this sort of production. You'd be a fool to hang on to him and watch him regress back to normal.
I mean, completely. Yeah, you don't keep him in a redraft. You ship him off like I shipped off Sammy Watkins at the beginning of last season, right? He is peaked. This is his high 3-touchdown game. Come on. And yeah, as a Kyle Pitts owner in a league or two, pulling out my damn hair. Like one of these touchdowns has to go to Kyle Pitts, right? No. Patterson. That's a fluke. It's an anomaly. This is not sustainable efficiency for him.
He's running back 3 on the year. And if you play in leagues where you count return yards, which there aren't many leagues out there that count as return yards, the man's getting like 30 to 40 return yards a week. So he's RB1 probably in those leagues. He's been insane. But my question to you is, as a Cordarelle Patterson owner, what would you give me? Like, what are you? You're not going to give me your RB1, I wouldn't think. So what would be your offer, Sam? If I were to say, Sam, well, if you know what is kind of the mid range, because I don't think you're giving me obviously like a Saquon Barkley or someone like that for him. But where's kind of the middle ground?
No, well, again, it's hard to like. Are you really going to trade running back for running back when he's not even really a running back? Like, I would like put him below the Mixon range, but above. It's like, why would I go out and try to get this guy? I don't know.
Well, I mean, here, well, if you're a Miles Sanders owner, would you rather have Miles Sanders or Cordarelle Patterson right now?
Well,
that's a legit question.
Are you going to go with the stat line or with the name, right? Because yeah, I'd rather have Miles Sanders because I think, okay, that he's going to, return to a certain level of performance. And again, I don't think this thing with Cordarelle Patterson is sustainable. So I'm not seeking him out yet. I need to see another week or two of this performance before I'd make any sort of attempt to get him. And yeah, the fact that he's a running back is just downright wrong.
I don't know why ESPN still has him as a running back. Most other sites have him as a hybrid running back, wide receiver. I'd love if he was a wide receiver because my wide receivers aren't necessarily the best. But I don't my whole point to Cordarelle is I don't think you can trade him for anything valuable. I think there's a lot of people like you guys that are smart fantasy owners. Now, if you find a bimbo in your league that's like, oh man, I don't like the way Jonathan Taylor started, I'll give you him for Cordarelle Patterson. Then yeah, heck yeah, I'd hammer that trade the minute I saw it come through the queue. But I just don't think you're getting that much value for him. And I think this is a guy like, sure, he's not, playing a ton of snaps, but how do you not, if you're the Atlanta Falcons, say, we got to get this guy the ball more? I mean, he's had 5 catches in each game in the last 3, having 6-7 carries too. And they play the New York Jets this weekend. So, I mean, the Jets looked good and their defense looked decent, but they still gave up 160 yards. Derrick Henry now. Cordarelle Patterson, is he Derrick Henry? I don't think so, but hey, I'm excited as a Cordarelle Patterson owner. He'll be in my lineup this week as David Montgomery went down, and I'm all in. I think you keep him. And this week it's against the Jets, and then he's got a bye week, and then he goes against Miami. Maybe you want to deal him that week because Miami's not great. Either way, I'm in on him. But let's talk about another guy that's number 3 at his position, Deebo Samuel. What are you doing with him in fantasy? I'll let you start with him, Sam or Logan, because Deebo Samuel's been about as good as they come in fantasy football this season, and it came really at the expense of a guy that you drafted, Brandon Ayuk.
Stop. I don't need to be reminded of that. Sam said pulling his hair out over Kyle Pitts. Well, guess what? I got Kyle Pitts as well. It's a frustrating time. It's a frustrating time over here because I did say Brandon Ayuk is going to be a guy. He's going to take that next step forward. He looked so impressive last year, but he's just running out there as a decoy. He's just getting some exercise, it seems. Deebo Samuel has been absolutely amazing. I cannot understand how defenses keep leaving him wide open, right? I was talking about Cooper Kupp last week. How does he keep getting open? Deebo Samuel is actually running wide open a lot of these games. It's a very impressive start to the season for Deebo. But kind of what I mentioned earlier, I still think this is more of his peak. This is a 49ers team that wants to run the ball. They're not a pass-first offense. And now you got potentially a Jimmy Garoppolo injury. Does that make you feel great about having any 49ers wide receiver? I don't think so. And again, I just think given the surrounding cast, you got Kittle, you do have Ayuk there. There's enough.
Ayuk is gone.
Stop. No, there's enough mouths to feed that this offense might go. Deebo might have a few dud weeks in there soon, even.
He might, but it's hard. What were you going to say, Sam?
This isn't just like 1 week of performance, and it's not just receptions and touchdowns. I think as a fantasy owner, the most telling stat is targets, right? And his targets have been awesome, 12 and 10 and 8 and 12 over the first 4 weeks of the season. I thought Deebo was going to have this year last year. I remember drafting him in a couple of leagues last year. I think he battled some injuries, and so I kind of counted him off this year. And at the end of the day, quarterbacks are going to fall in love with a guy, right? And so right now, Kittle's not performing at all. Ayuk's really not performing at all. And I think this Deebo thing is a lot more sustainable than what we saw maybe out of Patterson. I like this moving forward. And so if I'm trying to go after, am I going to go after Patterson or Deebo? I'm going after Deebo. And I think he is going to continue this performance. And that's a guy where I don't view this stat line as an anomaly. I think this is more in line with what he might actually be able to do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I would say if anyone were to offer a trade, Deebo Samuel versus Cordarelle Patterson, I think anyone who's getting Deebo wins that trade. And I do think, I mean, you point out the targets. I'm looking at him 12, 8, 10, 12. He's been awesome, and I don't see why they go away from him. It's not like Ayuk's in the doghouse. He's never getting out. That's his home now. And Kittle's not playing all too well. Kittle's never been known for getting touchdowns either. I believe he's never had a 5-touchdown season. Deebo Samuel's legit. Now, Trey Lance, I'd like to see. I didn't look at the splits between Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, but I do know Trey Lance threw a touchdown to Deebo in the second half. So you think he's looking for him? I mean, what's not the reason to get the ball in his hands? I mean, he runs tough. He's looked insane. And I think he leads the league in receiving yards too. He's looked great. And I'm not necessarily sold on that 49ers defense at the moment, not looked all that great. So they might have to be throwing in more games than running the ball like they really want to. So I don't know. I like Deebo Samuel. Now, do you trade him? Now, I think the big question is, can you trade him? And I don't think you're going to get value back for him. Like, I don't think someone's going out there. He's wide receiver 3. I don't think you're getting a wide receiver 1 back for him. I'd argue he probably deserves that. So I'd probably hang tight on him. But let's talk about another guy that's really not performed up to expectations. That's Alvin Kamara. What are your thoughts on him, Logan? I know you've had Alvin Kamara in a majority of our leagues whenever we played. You don't have him this year, but he's been a fantasy rock star for several years. But what about this year?
Yeah, and the whole reason why I said this is a don't touch player this year, because I wasn't sure what the offense was gonna look like with Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston out there. What did I say? I mean, first of all, fantasy aside, I don't think the Saints are all that good of a team. I don't really like the supporting cast that they have around Kamara offensively. And he's just not getting those targets. I mean, look at his stats. It's quite disappointing for anybody playing in a PPR league. You draft Alvin Kamara because you want him to be that Christian McCaffrey type role, going out there and receiving. Do you know what sort of receiving stats does Kamara have? I'm sure maybe you have.
I was pulling him up and I put him in our show notes. He has 10 receptions so far this year, which I'd be curious what his normal numbers are 4 games through the year, but I compared that to a guy that's exceeding his reception number. That's King Henry with already 14 on the year. You'd think, King Henry's got 14. You'd think we're like in week 15 of the season. King Henry is the most receiving receptions he's ever had in the season, 19. He's 6 away. And not to mention he's on pace for 2,167 rushing yards, an NFL record if he gets to that. Obviously, we have an extra game this year, so a little bit different, but yeah, Kamara not getting the receiving work that you'd love to see. I would be panicked as an owner. I mean, he's getting a ton of touches. So if you're hammering his over and rushing attempts, you're cashing it. But man, he has not looked good. I mean, just not getting him the ball in good ways to be a fantasy football effective player. And then you got Taysom Hill, vulturing touchdowns. I'm glad I don't have a lot of shares of Kamara because I would be pounding my head. I'd be like, this is why is Taysom Hill in the game? You
see first and goal and Taysom come running in there and you're like, oh no. Oh. You just know it's not going to him. Yeah, tough.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I mean, who are they getting back in 2 or 3 weeks? Michael Thomas, right? So, it's hard to have a 0 target game minimized even more. But you bring Michael Thomas in, and like if he's not catching the ball now, Alvin Kamara is not going to be catching the ball. Michael Thomas is back. So yeah, that dual threat incentivization that he was for so many years just doesn't seem to be existent this year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to necessarily say, I did just say he hasn't gotten a lot of receptions, obviously. I do think that he will get more. I think as the season goes on, they'll realize, we got to get this guy the ball in space, let him do what he's great at, and that's receiving the ball. But so I think if you're an Alvin Kamara owner, I think you got to be a little bit panicked, but you got to have patience. I think, they'll eventually, they're going to fix it. They're going to get him the ball in space like that. They don't want him running the ball 25 times a game, which is what he done 2 games in a row. I mean, I just can't see them wanting to do that. But yeah, you're right. Michael Thomas returning in a couple of weeks. I believe he returns week 6 or 7. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. But talking about another guy, I don't know what to do with Allen Robinson. Sam, you take it away. I know you got him on your team.
Yeah, I got him on my team on the bench. Benched him for Brandon Cooks this past week. Although I will say there's a little bit of a silver lining, and that was that, the performance that we saw from Justin Fields 2 weeks ago was really depressing. It looked like there was no outlook. Things were really bleak. Last week, Justin Fields looked better, right? I thought the Lions were going to upset the Bears. That didn't happen. Bears came out swinging. So while that didn't really translate to fantasy production for Allen Robinson, there is some hope there. But as of right now, can you actually start him? No, he's got to stay on your bench until he gets some more performance. I need to see maybe not even just one. I think I might need to see 2 weeks of performance from Allen Robinson before I, throw him back in. It's just, and it's a shame because I took him as my wide receiver 1, and he's just putting up nothing consistently.
Yeah, I'm on that Bears offense. It really is hard to trust people. Now, can I ask a question? And this might sound absolutely crazy, but who do you want going forward? Allen Robinson or Darnell Mooney, right? Darnell Mooney plays that role that, like, we see sometimes with rookie quarterbacks. They just lock in on a target and they're like, I really want that guy. Well, it's kind of looking like early on, Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney have some sort of weird chemistry, right? Darnell Mooney is definitely probably somebody that you might target, maybe in the waivers this week. I definitely think Darnell Mooney might be a thing going forward. As you mentioned, Sam, that offense did look better, right? They have to. There wasn't anywhere else to go. So who do you want in that?
Allen Robinson is going to have a good week one of these weeks. That's my bold prediction. I think that eventually they got to get him the ball. And maybe that is returned from Andy Dalton returning to the lineup, because Justin Fields, well, I did play well. And I don't necessarily think, if they went to Andy Dalton, would it surprise anyone? No, it's Matt Nagy. And I think they looked better last week because Matt Nagy, I believe, wasn't calling the plays. Big surprise. They looked much better last year when Matt Nagy didn't call plays. They look much better this week when he didn't call plays. Another guy, we'll speed through this one because we want to get into week 5 matchups. Robert Woods, he had a better week this week. I'll be the one that tackles him. I think better days are ahead for Robert Woods. I think you think about Sean McVay. I think he even talked about Robert Woods was angry after the game. He hasn't been getting the ball. I think he's due for some more points, and I think he's a better fit. I mean, you can't trade him now. I mean, he hasn't really had much of a good week. I mean, he had a touchdown, but not too much. Now we have one quick question, social question from my dad. He asked who's going to win first, the Lions or the Jaguars? Do you guys have a take? I can give you their schedules, but maybe you have a more positive outlook for one of them.
Well, I was pretty confident about the Lions going into last week, and they just didn't get it done against the Bears.
Yeah, that interception was embarrassing. We'll leave it at that.
And now all the controversy around the Jags, although I will say if there was a time for the Jags to catch a W, it would be against the Titans this week when they're reeling against that Jets loss that hurt so bad. But between the two, I think the Lions are going to get one quicker.
Yeah, I think. What are you?
I'm just gonna say, looking at the schedule, no, I cannot see where the win's gonna come. You just mentioned Jaguars, Titans. If you're picking Titans in that one, you cannot feel good about it. The Jaguars have talent. Laviska Shenault, they're finally getting involved. I don't like what I'm seeing at all from Jared Goff. He looks terrible. He really does look like a deer in headlights. The Bears defense is good, but Vikings, Bengals, yeah, he is seeing ghosts, right? Something about it, man. But Vikings, Bengals, Rams, those are 3 games. Those are the next 3 for the Lions. That doesn't look good at all. Jaguars next 3, Titans, Dolphins, Seahawks. Could the Jaguars win against Titans or Dolphins? Absolutely. Dolphins are reeling. Dolphins look very trash recently. So, yeah, give me Jaguars.
I would like Red Zone to be able to feature out some games in Jaguars, Dolphins in week 6. I'd like to feature that game out. I would never like to see a single highlight. You can keep it. I don't want it. I doubt it. I think it'll be blacklisted or whatever on every single TV. And then I don't even need to talk about Urban Meyer. There's a lot of question marks there. We'll see if he's even the coach by the time the podcast goes live on Wednesday morning. I don't know what's going on, but let's move into some week 5 underdog picks. Then we'll wrap up with some matchups and then Thursday night football. Sam, I want you to start off with your underdog pick this week.
Well, I'm picking the team that I picked against last week, and I'm picking the Bears. Right now, it's plus 198 money line against the Raiders, but they're playing in Las Vegas. A Raiders team that, is coming off a tough loss against the Chargers. Some question marks. There's so much hype about Derek Carr going into the game. Now there are a lot of question marks after the game. And you're looking at a Bears team that, did Justin Fields show me enough to make me really confident? Absolutely not. I think he only threw the ball 11 for 17 was his stat line or something like that. No touchdowns, but the progress from this past week to the week before was substantial enough. Plus, with that defense to make me think for that value, I like a feeler. Throw that out there. Bears beating the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm not going to hate on you. I picked the Bears a couple weeks ago, and they didn't show up. So I hope they show up better this week, because that's when I picked them against the Browns, and they got just absolutely spanked. I do think they have a chance this weekend. Well, I don't know if I'll put money on their money line, but I think they got a chance. They're a good enough team. They got enough talent. Justin Fields got to look a little better. It doesn't help that David Montgomery's not in, but I'm going to go to Logan. Who's your upset pick? Actually, you know what? I'll go first, because we'll transition from yours into some big matchups this weekend. I want to take my New York Jets in London, plus 155 versus the Falcons. Here's why. Falcons, I'm not sold on them. I don't think they're all that good. They just lost the Washington football team, which is terrible. Washington can't do anything, and they got Cordarelle Patterson, relying on him for 3 touchdowns. Now, I do want to bet on Calvin Ridley. I bet he has a good game this weekend, because he's been relatively quiet. So it's like 5 receptions in every game. But my New York Jets, Sam, are getting a W. We're going to 2-3. Zach Wilson really looked good that in fourth quarter. And I think his receivers finally gave him some help. He's been putting the ball in the money, granted, some of them to the defenders. But I do think he's got a good chance. He's putting the ball in the money, and Corey Davis finally caught it. I think he had like 6 drops prior to that. I might have made that number up. Definitely did. But I'm all in. New York Jets, plus 155. Hammer it.
Stop. I can't. How do I mute someone? I can't. How do I mute someone on here? No. I gotta put the kibosh on all this Jets talk for real. This is talk about like a reverse trap game, right? A lot of people are gonna be saying, "Oh, Jets, they finally got the win. Let's roll with some momentum." No. You're gonna have people believing. You're gonna have people believing, and then you're gonna see Zach Wilson's stat line: 200 yards, 3 interceptions. You're gonna be like, "What? Well, what was that?" Right? In London, Kyle Pitts is catching a dang touchdown this week. He's so close. They target him a ton in the red zone. He's catching a touchdown for us, Sam.
CJ Mosley says no.
Still not catch a touchdown, but you know who will? One Jamison Crowder, because the Jets are now with Jamison Crowder on the field. That 0-3 without him, that's behind us. That's the past. New Jets football team. I'm ready to get hurt in London.
In London, the added twist at 9:30.
You're gonna wake up early. Wake up early for an L. Then what do you do throughout your day?
You can't stop.
Right about that.
We're ready for everyone's going to be watching the New York Jets. And you're going to have to, because at 9:30 a.m., you're like, heck yeah, NFL football. You're like, oh, we got a London game. You're going to turn it on. Jets, Falcons. You're in for a treat. My treat, Logan. You can't bash us anymore. You can bash us next week when we get absolutely spanked in London. But Logan, who's your upset pick this week?
I'm picking something that actually makes sense, right? The Bills plus 125 on DraftKings versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, I'm not sold on the Chiefs defense one bit. I think Josh Allen, he's projected like 30-something fantasy points on ESPN right now. He's gonna have a day. He's just absolutely gonna throw the ball over at the Chiefs, do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. And I don't think I think the Bills defense is good enough, right? Sometimes we sleep on them. Sometimes we're so enamored with Josh Allen that we don't talk about the Bills defense. But the Bills defense is gonna present some problems up front for Pat. Look, I think at post 125. I don't care that it's an Arrowhead. I don't care one bit. Give me Bills all day long.
And we'll transition from that into the Bills Chiefs preview, because Sam, I want to hear your thoughts on this game, because it's a big one. You got the Chiefs sitting at 2-2, so you got obviously the Bills are at 3-1. It's a big game for both teams. Sam, what's your takeaway on this one?
I think hype for the Bills is high right now. I mean, yeah, they pitched 2 shutouts, which is always nice, but I think it was against the Texans and the Dolphins, which I hate to detract from that, but that detracts from that. And you're looking at a Chiefs team, Mahomes touchdowns in the last 4 games, 3, 3, 3, 5. The man's on fire. He's only getting warmed up. Tyreek Hill was in full swing last week, right? There's got to be a lot of confidence behind that. Kelsey was quiet, and they were still getting it done, right? There's concerns about who was going to be wide receiver 2 on that team. When Tyreek Hill is being wide receiver 1, 2, 3, and 4, doesn't really matter, right? They were so prolific. Yes, they're going to be facing a tougher defense against the Bills, but the Bills need this to be a low-scoring game to win, because I don't think they can keep up with the proficiency that Mahomes can when he's swinging. So it's all about the outcome, right? If it's a low-scoring game, going Bills. High-scoring game, going Chiefs. So I don't really know at this point, but I'm leaning towards the Chiefs.
Yeah, Josh Gordon should be activated this game, so we'll see if he actually gets into the game. But it's a tough one to predict because I think you could see both outcomes. Could you see the Bills come in and just look like the much better all-around team? Absolutely. Could you see Patrick Mahomes did what he did last weekend? Yeah. I don't know. This is like the Bills' kryptonite. I'd still ride with the Chiefs. I think this is a big game. They just obviously had a letdown game last game when they were at home in Arrowhead, losing to the Chargers. I think this is a big game. They need a win in front of those fans, and I would pick the Chiefs. And I don't think I'll pick their spread. I don't know if I'll bet a lot on this game. But yeah, I think this is a big week for the Bills defense because you got a lot of people saying, this defense is legit. But like Sam said, you're beating up on trash teams. Like you got to prove it against the big dogs. And this is a big dog. So I guess we'll see how that one goes. We're going to talk about one more matchup, Browns Chargers. We kind of hinted at it earlier. Who's your guys' takeaway for this one? I think Logan, you said you're riding with the Browns, though, right?
Yeah, no, I am riding with the Browns, and I think this is kind of a little bit of Justin Herbert facing a really good defensive front. You already mentioned Myles Garrett. Yeah, they've got a lot of talent up on Cleveland. Don't sleep on them, right? Browns backer. We're backing the Browns in this one. I don't care that they're traveling to SoFi. I think Justin Herbert probably going to have a pretty pedestrian day. It's probably going to be a lower one of the lower scoring games of the weekend. But give me Browns in a close one.
Yeah, I'm obviously not a Browns homer. I do like the Chargers, but I do think this game will be relatively close because I think it's a letdown spot for this Chargers team coming off, win against the Chiefs, then against the Raiders. Big 2 games, short rest. I'm excited to see with this game. This should be a fun one. And on contrary to popular belief, I think this is a high scoring game just because it doesn't make sense. You got a Chargers defense playing out of their minds, Browns defense playing out of their minds. Everyone's picking the under. Bet you it goes over just because it doesn't make sense. That's just how the NFL is. Sam, what's your takeaway with this one? And then we'll shoot into Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, you know what? I bet against the Chargers last week. I'm not going to do that 2 weeks in a row. I just think they're an all-around better team. And, yeah, I like what I'm seeing from Herbert. And, if Kirk Cousins can, get it done. Well, they lost the game, but air it out to Justin Jefferson. I like the Herbert to Keenan Allen connection. I think the Chargers win.
Kirk didn't do anything against them.
He did not look good, and airing it out to Keenan Allen is not. That's not. They don't do that. It's like, hey, Keenan Sam, Allen me to you on screen is how far Keenan Allen runs his routes. He's not going. It's hike and he turns. It's like, oh man, it's a weird one. But let's shoot on into Thursday Night Football. Wrap this up. We got a big one. Rams-Seahawks. Rams are the 2-point favorites. They're traveling to Seattle to take on the Seahawks, obviously over under 54.5. Obviously, you got the Seahawks coming off a big week 4 victory over the 49ers. They were my upset pick. Cash that one. And the Rams just got obliterated by the Cardinals, yet they're still favored in this one. What's your guys' takeaway? Look, Sam, I'll let you start this one off. Because you're a big Rams homer.
The Rams in a decisive bounce back victory. Yeah, it's in a hostile environment, right? It's always hard to play in Seattle. But I just think, Sean McVay, he's not going to want to go down in that direction, let things get carried away with, back-to-back losses. I think they learned from the mistakes they made against that Cardinals team. And so, what spread's sitting at 2 points. I like the Rams in a comfortable lead over the Seahawks.
Give us a score prediction. We'll go score prediction last. What about you? What's Logan?
No, I think you kind of got this one backwards. First of all, I am going to ride Seahawks +2 if I'm taking a spread pick. I think they're going to get Chris Carson involved, right? He hasn't done much of anything early on in the year. I think when all comes down to it, you mentioned that hostile crowd, right? Matt Stafford, and they don't have in any sort of ground game for the Rams. I think Russell Wilson's going to be all Houdini, prime Russell Wilson. Tyler Lockett is going to have a big game. Save this video for when Tyler Lockett has 150 and 2 touchdowns in this one. I would take Seattle +2.
So I guess I'm the tiebreaker here, and personally, I'm going to go with the Rams. I think the Rams. I like your argument, Logan, and I can't disagree with you. But my points here are the Rams have really made life tough on Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, and you'll see that in my video later today. I'm going to be talking about this game, and I just don't. Russell Wilson has struggled against the Seahawks. He's not looked all that good, and they really haven't won a lot of their recent games against the Rams. They're kind of winning. I don't know the exact record, but they're not winning a lot. They're losing a lot more than they win. And that was with Jared Goff. I think Matthew Stafford gets it right. Cooper Kupp obviously should have a get-right game. Seahawks defense, not that great. Now, you could say the Rams defense, not that great. They did not look good last week against the Cardinals, but you know what? I think Aaron Donald had one of the worst games of his career in that game, and I think he bounces back. He's going to be motivated. And if I had to pick a defense, I'd be banking on the Rams more so than the Seahawks. The Rams obviously have Jalen Ramsey. He's always been, on DK Metcalf. That's going to be tough. Tyler Lockett's going to be the X factor, in my opinion. Tyler Lockett and Chris Carson. Can they get Chris Carson going? Because right now he's basically RB2 to Alex Collins, which is absolutely wild. If you're a Chris Carson owner, I don't know what to tell you. I just shrug. I say, well, sorry, friend. But let's give a score prediction. Sam, you obviously are riding with the Rams. What's your score prediction?
Rams over the Seahawks, 28-24.
Yeah, okay. I was going to do that exact score, but Seahawks 28-24.
Okay, and I'll ride with the Seahawks or the Rams. I'll say I don't want 28. Get that out of here. We'll go 31-20. I'll go 31-21. I think they get a decisive win on the road. I think the Rams are due for a big bounce back week after they just got punked by the Cardinals. But any last thoughts for week 5, or we can wrap this show up?
Finally, we've got a good Thursday night game. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, they finally switched it over to
Bengals.
Fox, right? They finally, isn't Fox the one that does it now? They finally gave us a good one after they've been hitting us with Jaguars, Bengals every week. Yeah. But that'll do it for Thursday or for our weekly podcast. We'll be back next Wednesday. We appreciate you guys. If you're new to the channel, click that subscribe button. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. This has been Austin for Logan and Sam. This has been the Call on Our Shot podcast, and we'll catch you guys again next week. Peace out.